So, which group of Yu-Gi-Oh players has it worse? Physical TCG players or digital Master Duel players? We're going to answer that question today by examining a meme posted on Twitter, because what better way to settle a debate? This one comes to us from Trevor Allen, and he is primarily like a Yu-Gi-Oh sort of account on Twitter. I follow him. He, posts things, talks about stuff, participates in the discourse. And I need to give a little bit of context for this meme. So recently Master Duel released a new ban list, and it did not change many things. It semi-limited Solemn Judgment, which seemed a little strange, and also brought a couple of cards that were like at 2 back to 3, and there were only a few changes and people were kind of disappointed, sort of confused. It brought back up the sort of old narrative that's been going on for years, really, about Master Duel ban lists just not being sufficient, not really making a difference, the developers not understanding how to balance the meta and whatnot. So there's been some infighting, of course, between like TCG players and Master Duel players. And so he posts this meme, and we're going to break it all down. Now, to be clear, I'm aware this is just a meme. It's probably all in good fun, although it definitely seems like one of the more charged ones. A lot of different things here on this picture. So I figure it would be fun to just sort of go through and talk about each one and break it down. And I want to hear what you guys think about this. How much truth is there to these things? Is it kind of a mixture of fact and fiction? And do you realize that the actual answer is if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, you're just losing either way? I jest. Okay, so on one side, we've got the beta TCG duelist. On the other side, we've got the Giga Chad Master Duelist. You kind of know this meme template. So, beta TCG duelist says, if I don't eat this month, I can go to YCS Venezuela. We'll just start here and just kind of go across. So, this is obviously a commentary on how traveling to YCS events is expensive. And as we'll get into a little bit later, the prize support maybe doesn't feel like it necessarily warrants the travel. Traveling to events is just pricey, although I don't think this is a Yu-Gi-Oh specific problem. Like, no matter what card game you play, it's going to cost a lot to travel to a Pokemon regional, a Lorcana regional, like a One Piece event. Like anything, it's always going to kind of be the same. If you're going to like fly, stay in a hotel, then the usual expense rules apply. Like if you can't afford it, then you just can't afford it. But it's also smart to try to get groups of friends and just travel together and plan your trip well and all that stuff. But I guess the main commentary here is that if you want to compete at the high levels of Yu-Gi-Oh and like go to these YCS events, it does mean you will have to travel. And by comparison, and of course, like with Master Duel, you can kind of play it from your house. So yeah. I know that some people go to like every single YCS event. I don't think that that's most Yu-Gi-Oh players. I think that only people that kind of tippy top are like traveling to every single event. I think the average Yu-Gi-Oh player goes to like maybe one YCS a year that's like relatively close to them. So I don't know that this point is like entirely a dunk or a win or whatever, but I do agree that it's expensive if you want to go and compete in this game. Goes on to say, I suppose $200 for a spreadsheet is a good deal. This is a commentary on the recent sort of controversy around the spreadsheets and the Yu-Gi-Oh coaching, which I did make a video on actually recently. You might want to go check that out. I talk about it a little bit more in detail there. But basically, yeah, in the TCG, there are players, top level players who sell spreadsheets and courses and coaching that you can buy on Metafy for different prices. Now, this is a little bit deceptive because I know that the spreadsheets are not this much money. I know they're not like $200. I think that they're $30 or something like that, which is still, hiding knowledge behind a paywall, as many people have called it. And, we've talked about this before, like whether or not you want to pay for Yu-Gi-Oh! It's really a person-to-person thing. I can't tell anybody what to do with their money, and no one really can. But I guess the idea here is that, like, in tandem with the fact that the YCS event costs a lot of money and that the prize support's not that great, paying $200 for a spreadsheet maybe doesn't feel like a great time. Okay, next thing, I can't wait for Konami to implement the new format they never once hinted at so I can finally do something with 99% of the cards I own. Yeah, okay. This one is the first one that really kind of stings because I feel like I see myself in this picture here. I've wanted for a long, long time for Konami to finally implement some sort of a mid-power level format. We've talked about that plenty on this channel. You guys know there's kind of a death of mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh going on. And I do think that a lot of players aren't really getting a proper place to use their, utilize just like a lot of the cards that they own. Like if you're not sort of playing the best thing, then there's not much space to play like the mid-level things. And sometimes people think like, oh, Konami might one day implement like a draft format or implement some sort of another battle pack thing or a mid-power format. But Konami's never really implied that that will ever happen. I mean, I guess we're lucky to even have somewhat official support for things like Goat and Edison. So yeah, and it does mean that if you're a TCG player, then a lot of the cards that you have simply aren't competitively viable, and you will just be sitting there and they'll just be kind of like rotting, collecting dust, and having to be stored or sold as bulk. So I do agree that this is unfortunately true of the TCG, but it doesn't mean to say that like people don't enjoy advanced format, but it does mean that like if you want to play anything that's like not kind of the best decks in the room, then you really got to push yourself. Darn, the sleeves I bought today have a fingernail indent. Guess I need new ones. So here's a commentary on the sleeve situation with Yu-Gi-Oh! Where basically, if you're playing in a tournament and one of your sleeves gets ruined, you pretty much have to replace it immediately or risk getting disqualified. And this can be a real inconvenience, especially at, a regional or YCS event where it will literally cost you a round. And locals, I guess, like sometimes you can get away with it. But I will go a little bit further and say that one thing I don't love about playing physical Yu-Gi-Oh!, which, by the way, I do play it. I don't actually have a real dog in this fight. I'm just explaining parts of a meme. That's all. Calm down. Is having to, like, sleeve up cards and, like, re-sleeve and unsleeve and re-sleeve and unsleeve, especially because, like, double sleeving is more common now and that's a little bit more time-consuming. It can be a little bit... Like, this is like a small thing on the totem pole. I'm not saying it's like a make or break thing, but having to like sleeve cards can like just be a little annoying, especially when you have like leftover sleeves and like you don't really know what to do with them, like how to store them and stuff. So, comparatively, just being able to build a deck on Master Duel is obviously something that is a bit of a boon there. I should actually mention for this other one before here with like the whole alternate formats where you can do things with more cards. I guess the point of the meme here would be that like in Master Duel there are sort of alt formats in the form of events or like festivals that they do, although I don't think that that's entirely fair to say because like festivals just kind of happen when they happen and you can't really queue into them after they're done. So yeah, judge, I know this ruling, judge, I think they're cheating. Yeah, or I don't know this ruling. So this is a commentary on the fact that you do have to rely on judges a lot in paper Yu-Gi-Oh! And I will say that this is something that I don't love about paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Is sometimes having to like call over a judge and kind of be at the whim of what they like deem the correct ruling to be. Obviously, there's supposed to usually be like a head judge that you can appeal to, but it does sometimes suck if like the rulings, which can change from event to event, don't feel consistent. That sort of sucks. Or like having to call a judge over and all that stuff. That's one of my favorite things about Master Duel is that I don't have to worry about rulings at all. The game runs as a simulator. It will always resolve everything correctly all the time, like into infinity. And it'll even make it pretty clear about like why certain things like did and didn't happen. Like you can always see chain links and stuff like that. So I will say this one, yeah, they're right about this in this meme. I do think that like having to deal with judging, like the judge procedure can be stressful. However, I will say this. I think that the fact that judges exist is still like a good thing. I just wish that Konami would do more like official, kind of having a rulings database or repository so that when cards are ruled a certain way, like it can sort of set a precedence. That'd be good. Okay. If I sell my blood plasma for a month, I can afford a new engine and maybe win some booster packs. Yeah, just more commentary on like how Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself, like physical Yu-Gi-Oh! It's expensive, costs a lot. If you want to get like a Fiendsmith engine or, Mulch Armies up until recently, you had to kind of shell out. And like sometimes a new engine can cost a few $100, and that might just be for like a playset of things, of one card, I mean. And oftentimes you'll just win some booster packs. I think that this one kind of gets to that like thing where I've discussed this in past videos. I know that people like to dunk on Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's expensive, but two things I will say is the first is you don't always have to play the new engine unless you're like competing at YCS events where maybe that would become like a big thing. I think that if you're playing local, you can kind of just use what you want and get by. But I think more importantly though, like value in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just kind of based on how much you can play the cards, I've always said. So like if you're buying a Fiendsmith engine, and that means you're probably the sort of person who's going to be going to a lot of regionals, like you're planning out, like, okay, I'm going to go to this regional, then this YCS, then this, so you're going to be going on a little bit of a tear because that's what gives cards value. This isn't a game like Pokemon or certain other games where like, the value is in the card's collectability or like it's alt art or something, or it's rarity. It's kind of more like either you're going to use this for the 9 to 12 months that you get before it's banned, or you're not. I'm not saying that's like an entirely good thing, but just sort of somewhat defending this, I guess, sort of devil's advocate, whatever you want to call it. Winning some booster packs. Yeah, you know. This actually reminds me of one of my small complaints I've always had about Yu-Gi-Oh's public events at YCS events, where like the public events pricing is not amazing. Like it'll just be things like Genesis Impact or like Duelist Nexus, kind of not the best packs. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a good point. Okay. Wah, Max C, sob, crack. Okay. Yeah, this is about how like TCG players kind of like to insult Master Duel because Max C is legal, and there's kind of this whole central despise, disdain for Max C because people feel like it just completely ruins Yu-Gi-Oh! It's overpowered, it's polarizing. And you know, I'm not about to sit here and go to bat for Max C. I don't think that the card is particularly fair. I think it can be really polarizing and all of those things. It doesn't stop me from playing like Master Duel. I don't really mind it that much, but I've realized recently I'm a more tolerant Yu-Gi-Oh player than I think most people are. I feel like a lot of people kind of get in their own head about cards that they don't like. That's not just Max C. That's like, you know, Dimension Shifter and just any, you know, cards that kind of can swing a duel. So like I don't mind Max C being in Master Duel. It doesn't really stop me from enjoying the game. I still queue up. I still play. I play it. I play against it. I use some counterplay. I don't get that bothered when it beats me. I don't feel hollow when I win with it. I'm just playing Yu-Gi-Oh. That's not everybody. I do think that it would be nice if people would kind of dial back the whole like this one card like ruins a format or whatever. Like I don't think that's true, but like I said, I'm not here to convince you that Max C is like a great, perfectly designed card or anything. Judge is stalling for time. Okay. Yeah, this one is another thing that physical TCG, I will just straight up agree. Like I do not like Yu-Gi-Oh's like end of match procedures very much. I think that my bigger concern though that I found with playing Yu-Gi-Oh like in person more at locals and especially at like the YCS event, I was recently at YCS Houston, is the fact that I actually just don't think that modern Yu-Gi-Oh is designed for like 45-minute rounds. Like just between the amount of things that you have to read, and I'm not saying that as like Yu-Gi-Oh cards have so much text in them, and Endymion, the Mighty Master. No, like I'm being actually serious when I say here, if you are playing like, let's say you're playing Primite Blue Eyes and you're playing against, you know, Memento. There are a lot of Memento cards with a lot of different effects, and you will have to pick up at least one or two of them and read them just to get the specifics, to know what's a cost, what's not a cost, what gets destroyed, like ifs and thens, and like all these little effects. And they'll probably have to pick up a lot of your cards. And because turns already go a long time, and just like stuff has to be read, it can get really messy. Like one of the weird things I've always found with like Yu-Gi-Oh is what's considered slow play changes from the beginning of the round to the end. So the beginning of the round, taking a few seconds to think through your moves or like kind of plan your turn out is not seen as slow play. But when like there's 5 minutes left, it's suddenly considered slow play, even if it's the same length of time. That's just sort of a hot take I've always had. Like I don't like that. I do like that on Master Duel, you know, time is very like justice is blind sort of thing. You both have a turn timer, like a chess timer type of thing. Counts down whenever you have an opportunity to activate things. Otherwise, it doesn't. And you can't really like slow play per se in Master Duel. So, yeah, having to deal with like the time stuff in the TCG sucks, but it's kind of just a consequence of playing a physical game. And the final thing is a bunch of Nintendo Switches and air fryers. I recently talked about the air fryer thing. This doesn't really count as like a valid criticism of Yu-Gi-Oh because like the air fryers that are given out at these tournaments are usually like a separate accessory sort of prize in addition to maybe like getting your OTS packs, getting your packs, whatever. That an air fryer is actually like kind of a useful thing to have. I mean, it's worth like $75-100 for a decent air fryer, so like I wouldn't mind winning one in a tournament. It certainly doesn't look great like to have as the only prize, but to be clear, this isn't Konami giving out the air fryers. This is just shops giving out air fryers because they can. And there's the Nintendo Switch meme that we've always talked about. This has at least been updated now to a Steam Deck, so that's how I know that I guess like is an older meme. So now they give Steam Decks instead of Switches. Is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, you know, I think the big problem people have is just that they want cash money as a prize in Yu-Gi-Oh! And like the truth is that's just never going to happen. So these are the prizes that we get. It would be nice if Konami would look into some different types of prize support, like, you know, serialized cards with like special art arts and rarities that are like event specific. That could be really cool. Maybe doing more with like giant cards and stuff like that. But I don't actually think that like this prize support thing is as bad as people make it out to be. Like if I went to, you know, a large local or like a regional that was maybe an hour away and the prize was an air fryer in addition to all the other things that come with a regional, that's not that bad. I do understand though where like if you traveled, you know, across the country and paid a lot of money, then you just want to switch, then that's where that gets a little bit yuckier. All right, so let's see what Master Duel's got on its side, because this is I know a clearly biased meme, but still, we're going to actually see if these big boons that they say for Master Duel are all entirely true. So the Giga Chad Master Duelist plays from bed while watching SpongeBob. Yeah, this is true. Basically getting at the idea that, Master Duel is something that you can play from the comfort of your home. I really do enjoy that part about Master Duel. I like that I can play in whether it's tournaments or the ranked ladder without really having to put my shoes on, get up and like sleeve cards, find physical stuff, sort through things, go to locals. Just I like that I'm able to kind of quickly get in reps and games and stuff. So that's true. That's valid. Some people do like the sitting across from another person, though, the physicality of that, the social aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, playing alone at your house, it's mostly good, but like it's not so bad to touch grass, although I don't know that going to locals counts as touching grass, but at least you get some fresh air in the process. Monthly ban lists. This is probably the most or one of the more controversial parts here because the monthly ban lists in Master Duel, I generally like them, but I think that in exchange, we get ban lists that are oftentimes like the one that inspired this whole meme to get posted today or whatever. Master Duel ban lists tend to be a little bit more minimalistic, a little bit more reserved. You'll get cards kind of getting semi-limited a lot, just like moving from 3 to 2 to 1 to 3 to 2 to 1 to 1 to 2 to 3, whatever. And like there won't be that many. And sometimes people feel like they shave at consistency as opposed to maybe actually hitting problem cards. That said, though, the TCG, I agree that I think the TCG makes more impactful ban lists whenever they, we get ban lists maybe every 4 months or so. But the ban lists do tend to be pretty large and pretty impactful, and they really change the game, whereas Master Duel ones don't feel as meaningful. I think part of the reason why Master Duel ban lists are as reserved as they are, though, is because it is a digital game, and so they know that a lot of people are playing a lot of different decks, and the player base is large, and if you go to town just hacking and slashing at people's cards that they've crafted, that's a quick way to disrupt a lot of your player base. So I think that doing monthly lists that are just sort of small micro adjustments to different decks and win percentages of decks isn't a bad thing. I will say one last thing though, with Master Duel, you typically get the more impactful ban lists after Duelist Cups. So it's you might get a ban list every month, but maybe only every third one or so will be a meaningful one. So there's a mixed bag. Event pricing literally just as good as the TCGs. I will say Master Duel does not get enough credit for its event pricing. There's some really cool prizes that you can win from the Master Duel Challenger Cups. There's the Rescue Rabbit plushes and the hoodies and the Master Duel sleeves, and sometimes they give out PS5s, and now they have this really cool new Sky Striker jacket with Kagari on the back. And they also do give out Steam decks and stuff. However, the catch though is that they have stopped doing, so mostly they do those Challenger Cups in Europe. They've done a few of them in the United States, and actually, as somebody points out here, it took a year to get Challenger Cup pricing, so that sort of sucked. But yeah, you can win some really good prizes for tournaments that are free to enter from your home, so that kind of factors in with this first point, and that's really cool. Being able to just enter a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, not have to pay, not have to put your shoes on, and just play with the decks and the cards that you have in Master Duel, pretty cool. However, anyway, to get back to the original point, I think more people should try to play the Challenger Cups, but also they don't do the Challenger Cups in the United States anymore outside of the Shadow Duelist events, which they haven't announced. I don't know if they've announced the next one of that, so that's a little weird. I think they need to bring in Challenger Cups back to the United States, but yeah, otherwise this kind of does check out. A lot of the pricing for Master Duel is quite good, given that you are not having to put in this money that's kind of associated with the TCG. Nearly 80% of content creators and 50% of professional TCG duelists have now transitioned to Master Duel. Yeah, I think this is pretty much true. Most content creators now are making Master Duel content entirely. There's not really a lot of physical TCG content. I actually touched on this in my sort of death of the midcore Yu-Gi-Oh player discussion, where it feels like many content creators play Master Duel and they're just kind of playing spin the wheel thing, Master Duel Saga, Master Chef, whatever. Thing where they're kind of just playing with random cards and card pools and having fun and chatting over it. The content, fine. I don't have a problem with that. But it does, I guess, feel a bit sad that not that many people are playing the physical TCG anymore. It feels like if you're playing physical Yu-Gi-Oh, it's either for Goat and Edison on one side, or top level, Fiendsmith Engine, Blue Eyes, Malice, Ryziel, Memento, whatever the top sort of best things are. There's not that much of an in-between. And that's reflected in the content that is made for the game now, where you just don't get as many people doing deck profiles and kind of just dual vids and openings and stuff of just your average TCG content. I made a full video on that if you want more of my thoughts on it, but I'm interested in hearing what people think about this. I also do know there are some top players who've just kind of transitioned to Master Duel because it's another way to qualify for Worlds if you're one of the very competitive types. And arguably, maybe it's even, I don't want to say easier. I mean, you have to put up with the hell that's the Duelist Cup. But you get to do a team event, and that's really cool. I will say at Worlds, the Master Duel events seem like they get more interest and like kind of narrative behind them than even the TCG like physical card game events do. That's at Yu-Gi-Oh! Worlds though. So I still think people revere a YCS winner more than they maybe revere like people who do well in the Duelist Cup. And some players just do both. Easy access to a website with almost unlimited statistics on ranked and tournament stats, lists, card trends, usage, and it's interactive. Yeah, so this is Master Duel Meta, basically the website where you can just track everything Master Duel, news, tournament results, deck lists, all that stuff. I will say that is an amazing website. I think that they tried to make an equivalent site that's just like Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta or something, which is supposed to kind of be more for the TCG or TCG and OCG. That's got like similar resources and tools, but obviously that's just kind of one of the things with like a digital card game, you can easily track a lot more of that information and submit stuff, and it can be more tangible in that way. Whereas with the like physical TCG, you just won't be able to get all the deck lists that played like at locals every week or at a regional necessarily. And so as a result of that, it sort of means like, well, you'll never get to have like that raw information if you're one of those sort of info junkies. Never spent a dime. Yeah, Master Duel is very free to play friendly. That's not a secret. You can play Master Duel just a little bit every week and kind of build up gems and get a deck. Now, if you want to expedite the process, then yeah, I guess you'll have to buy gems if you're just super impatient. But I really do think that the gems are a scam in Master Duel. No one should ever be buying those outside of the maybe rare occasional like gem deals. I can relate. I don't say never spent money on Master Duel. I think I spent money on Master Duel like the very first week that it dropped and never since. So it's been like over 3 years. So yeah. This compared to like obviously having to spend a bunch of money for a new deck engine or whatever. Yeah. I get the point they're making, and I think it's a valid one. Master Duel is a lot cheaper to play. 100 times larger player base. I have no information on the statistics of this, but I'm willing to believe there are probably just more people who play like Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel than the TCG right now. It sounds like something I can believe, but I don't have any, like I said, no evidence to back that up. I guess you could look at like Steam player counts and other stuff like that and maybe like piece it together. I mean, it's true that like a YCS, which is like the pinnacle of Yu-Gi-Oh!, might only get like 1,500 to 2,000 players, whereas like Master Duel probably has that many people on every day. So I don't know. Like I don't know if this is like a knock against the TCG so much as it's a digital game, so there's of course going to be a lot of people online. All right, nice 10 minutes of free time. Time for a quick duel whenever I want. Yeah, this is a nice part about Master Duel. It kind of just goes hand in hand with the first thing, which is like, if you just got a little bit of free time, you can play Master Duel, get in a quick duel. Now, 10 minutes of free time, I think would maybe be more, a less charitable way of putting this is your opponent might just win the coin flip and then combo for 10 minutes because that shit happens a lot in Master Duel. But I guess that goes for both forms of Yu-Gi-Oh! And this last one here in the corner, which like maybe you can see this, but I think my face cam's in the way. It says, thanks, random Redditor, for the 20-page combo spreadsheet. This applies to both, but this is, I guess, supposed to be a commentary on the TCG. My voice is going out now. A commentary on the sort of TCG community selling spreadsheets for a lot of money, whereas like on Master Duel, there are people who will just give you combo spreadsheets for free. That said, though, I mean, I think that there's probably the same exists for the TCG. I just, like, I don't know. I don't know if that's like a great one. But anyways, so that's pretty much the meme. This was fun. I like going through these posts because like while they are memes, you can always tell that there's like a bit of they're certainly motivated. There's an agenda being pushed. This one obviously seems pretty pro Master Duel, but I think at the end of the day, like it's not, 100% just TCG sucks, Master Duel is amazing, because I think that like the TCG is like, that's Yu-Gi-Oh's core. Like that's how a lot of people got into it. And even if it's not always the most accessible thing, and maybe the prizes aren't worth that much, and maybe the time rules suck, and well, anyway, let me know down in the comments, what do you think? What's better, Master Duel or physical paper Yu-Gi-Oh? Or maybe just both, because like, I mean, who really cares? I'm thinking that this might be like a segment that I do more often, is finding these Yu-Gi-Oh memes and dissecting it. So we probably need a name for this segment if we want to do it like that. Okay, anyway, I will see you guys down below. I'll be reading and responding. Best turn.